Thank you very much for the presentation. Do you hear okay? Do everyone have their mics? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. And first, I would like to thank Susana, who is there for inviting me here to moderate this first opening panel, and her content coordinator, Carolina, for producing this and helping us move on. It is a real honor for me to be here with that diverse audience full of civil society representatives, academics, politicians, decision makers, entrepreneur, businesswomen. It is great to be here with such a remarkable panelist too. So thank you very much. The main aim of this panel is to introduce and to explore the main topics that were chosen for the 2018 W20, that are labor inclusion, financial inclusion, digital inclusion, and rural development. We will see how these topics relate to the mainstream of G20, how was the process of decision-making carried on, what was the role of them as topic chairs, how all the work was done, and how they're moving forward towards the recommendations. So we'll have 2 rounds of questions, and I think they already say something about the questions from the audience. So let's start. Andrea, good morning.
Morning.
I will introduce you first. Andrea has joined Ernst & Young 33 years ago, and she has dedicated her career to assisting clients in matters related to audit and advisory. She's responsible for promoting the diversity and inclusiveness culture in Ernst & Young Argentina. Since 2010, she has led the forensic practice in the firm, assisting clients in all types of investigation, fraud, prevention, and dispute resolution. She's also South America's representative as Inclusiveness Advisory Council of Ernst & Young Americas. Next to her is Paula Ferrari, who has joined GSMA in 2014. In her current position as Regional Marketing Director for Latin American, she's also representing GSMA as topic chair for digital inclusion focused topic within W20 Engagement Group, which will advise the G20 member states on issues around gender equality and the economic empowerment of women. She has also been a teacher and an independent consultant. In the third place is Priya Basu, who currently heads the newly established Women Entrepreneur Finance Initiative, which you might know as WeFi. Since joining the bank group in 1998, you are 20 years now. Wow. She has held various positions, mostly recently manager in the Development Finance Vice President Secretariat at the World Bank Group. Priya has focused her career on developing and implementing innovative solutions to some of the most pressing development challenges of our time. Next to her is Luisa Carvalho, bon dia, who joined UN Women as Regional Director for the Americas and the Caribbean in November 2014. The promotion of gender equality and empowerment of women has been a guiding principle throughout all her extensive career in the United Nations system, in the public sector, and in the academia. Before joining the UN, she has worked in the government of the Federal District of Brazil for over 15 years. She also has experience as a professor and as a researcher. So now let's jump into the discussion. The first question, Andrea, is addressed to you. You have a lot of experience in all the G20 process. You have worked with different engagement groups, including Business 20. So we will try to go from general questions to more specific ones. So the first one is, in what ways are the topic addressed by Women 20 strategic to G20 agenda? And how is gender mainstream across engagement groups? Universal topics and anything you want to say.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Good morning, everyone. It's pleasant to be here. And as you said, it's my honor to represent EY here in its role as Labor Inclusion Topic Chair. To address your question in terms of why the W20 is strategic for the G20, this presidency made a deliberate decision to put gender at the forefront of its agenda. What does it mean? It implies that the gender perspective was included in all policy discussion across different mainstreams or different work streams. We as EY, and you said that, work with the W20 from its beginning, from Turkey to China to Germany, and now in Argentina, and we hope to do so in the future, of course. But we have seen progress in mainstream the gender agenda again, but we know that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. This year message is absolutely clear in terms of why the gender equality is so relevant. There is no way to fulfill the fair and sustainable growth that is the theme of the G20 without including women and men equally, not women, but women and men equally. And this is why the W20 is strategic to the G20. This is absolutely why. There is no other reasons. We need to think of including both men and women equally. We also, from the W20, work, as you said, with many other different work streams like the B20, like the T20, the think tank, the C20, the Civil 20, and also the G20 because it has its own women's work stream. And all together share different perspectives, all together share different insights, and we build on different policies, recommendations that perhaps includes their own perspectives, but at the end, they follow the same aim, just women inclusion in the economy. This is why it's strategic. Let me talk about what we cover during our work as the part of the W20. As you said, we represent the 4 topics: labor inclusion, digital inclusion, financial inclusion, and also rural women. And the connectivity of all these topics are crucial. We cannot address only one aspect. We have to address all the aspects together.
As cross-cutting issues.
Let me give you some examples, and perhaps for you it's easier to understand that with some specific examples. Yesterday morning we had the delegates meeting, only for delegates, and they highlighted the relevance and the importance to address women access online, for instance. That's really very critical. We think that if we add 600 million of women and girls in online access, it could add up to $18 billion to the global GDP. To concrete that growth, we have to address this online access not only by the digital perspective, but also from the labor inclusion perspective, because we need to access to digital and also to the workforce, and to have women in the workforce to produce that growth. Okay. Another example could be that G20 countries, of course, need to accelerate growth. This is at the end of its conception. And to accelerate growth, they need to also amplify the power of entrepreneurs. This was covered during all the B20 discussions.
To empower them.
And when we mean entrepreneurs, we, of course, mean also women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs are critical to that. How did we address the issue of women entrepreneurs? We try to better understand how they can access to capital, and this is financial inclusion, how they can access to more public procurement contract, and that was labor inclusion. So this is what the W20 is all about. It is about thinking of policies that will ensure that no one is left behind, and especially women are not left behind.
Thank you so much. Paula, as you are the topic chair of digital inclusion, and Andrea was speaking about the importance of interlinking it together. So can you describe how was the dialogue process, and which were the actors involved, and how the recommendations were agreed on, having in mind all these interlinkages between the different different breaches that women face?
Sure. But first of all, I have to say that I'm delighted to represent the GSMA as topic chair for digital inclusion within the W20. It has been an amazing and a wonderful journey since the kickoff in December. Like all the three of the other topic chairs, the GSMA has led up the debate on digital inclusion in the run-up to the G20 by organizing forums, webinars, roundtables around the world, and all other sort of activities for discussion. And we did this together with delegates from the G20 countries, which are really more than 20 countries, delegates, experts, knowledge partners, and other international organizations. Together, we created this discussion by means of an online platform. But I would like to highlight first the strategic role of the delegates, right? Mm-hmm. Delegates are really, really important in the whole process, because not only because they are the only ones who can vote, right? They also provide a diverse and global perspective on each issue. Without them, the whole process has really no sense at all.
They're the heart of the process.
Yes, they're the key part of the process. So together, these delegates, which were more than 200 women around the world, experts, topic chairs, knowledge partners, like I said, worked in a collaborative way within this online platform to discuss the different issues. Knowledge partners and experts provided not only knowledge, but also served as advisors in the creation of the content. So basically, the international dialogue can be described as a fluent, a permanent, an interactive process to promote diversity, to promote the exchange of ideas and knowledge in order to create all the recommendations that are going to be issued to the G20 member countries.
Yes, it should be a very tough process, but I'm sure you got there.
Yeah.
Going to the more specific subject of the different breaches that women are facing, Priya, you are the topic chair of financial inclusion, and in your work as in the World Bank, what do you think are the current gaps or constraints that women are facing right now, and how is the Wi-Fi initiative helping to address them specifically?
Thank you. And first of all, it's a real honor to be here in the company of so many accomplished women. And I'm really happy to be representing the World Bank Group here this morning. So Vicky, you asked about the constraints that women entrepreneurs face. And if you'll bear with me, I would like to start with sharing some statistics. So recently, the IFC, which is a sister organization of the World Bank, did a survey and found that the financial gap, the credit gap that women entrepreneurs face around the world is currently estimated at $1.5 trillion annually. In terms of access to markets, so as you know, roughly 30% of registered businesses worldwide are women-owned. Well, that's not a bad number. It should be 50, but it's 30%. But only 1% of sourcing by global corporations is done from women entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So market access is another huge constraint. The World Bank Group recently produced a report called Women, Business and the Law, which surveys 189 economies. Mm-hmm. In 104 economies, there is one constraint or the other that prevents women from working in certain sectors, like, for example, manufacturing, agriculture, energy. In 75 of the 189 economies that we surveyed, there are restrictions to women owning property. In 68 of the 189 economies, there are restrictions to women's agency and freedom of movement. For example, they can't have a bank account. They can't move freely from one place to the other. So I think these statistics, they may not be a surprise to you, but I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that there are still huge barriers that women entrepreneurs face in accessing finance, in accessing markets, in accessing mentoring, capacity building, what it takes to integrate into supply chains of corporations, and there are still huge legal, regulatory, and policy barriers that women entrepreneurs face to grow and succeed. So really, it's against this background that we set up the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, or WeFi as it's known. It was announced at the G20 in Hamburg in July 2017 with the support and financial backing of 14 governments. In fact, it's the first time that 14 such diverse governments came together around the issue of gender equality and women's economic empowerment. And very soon after it was announced at the G20 in Hamburg, it was established in October 2017, and in December I was asked to head it up. It's been quite a journey, very exciting, lots of obstacles to address. What makes WeFi quite unique is that really it is the first global financial initiative of its type that seeks to address all of these barriers that I mentioned in a comprehensive manner. So there are lots of initiatives that focus on, say, access to finance or access to markets or on the policy issues. But the philosophy behind WeFi is that we're not going to reach sustainable solutions unless we tackle all these barriers together. Because unless we really focus on all of them, we're not going to give women entrepreneurs the chance to succeed. So the business model of WeFi is that we currently operate through accredited multilateral development banks, 8 of them, the World Bank, the IFC, the IDB, the African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, EBRD. From time to time, we issue calls for proposals. We've just issued one so far because we're still very new. These calls for proposals ask for these MDBs to submit projects that meet the criteria and the philosophy of the WeFi. We issued the first call a few months ago and were able to allocate our first round of funding in less than 6 months after we were established. So it was very quick, last April. And with the 120 million that we allocated, we were able to mobilize $1.6 billion of additional financing from commercial and other sources. So that's another kind of founding principle of the WeFi, which is leverage. We want, for every dollar of grant money that we give out, we want to be able to mobilize additional money because we realize that scale and impact are really very important. We want to focus at least 50% of WeFi resources on the poorest, most fragile, conflict-affected countries, and I'm happy to say that in the first round we exceeded this target. 58% went to the poorest, most fragile settings. And the projects that we've supported, each of them takes this kind of holistic approach to addressing access to finance, access to markets, access to technology, legal, regulatory, policy barriers. When it comes to finance, it's not just access to bank loans, it's access to equity capital, to venture capital, to growth capital, to insurance, because we recognize that there are many different kinds of financial needs that women have. So anyway, we're just at the start of this process, we are looking forward to being able to generate real results, real impact to improve the lives of women entrepreneurs around the world.
That's very great to know you're doing something about those figures and numbers that they're not strange at all, but they're still shocking. And I think we shouldn't get used to shock ourselves when we receive these kinds of data. So thank you very much. Luisa, I love your name, Luisa. It's very nice.
Me too.
You are the chair of Rural Women. So how does the development of rural women relate to all the other focus topics, and how do these kinds of bridges affect in particular inequalities in labor, digital, financial inclusion, as well as lack of access to credit and infrastructure, particularly in that collective?
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Susanna and her team and Argentinian government for the invitation. I'd like to thank my colleagues because we couldn't ask for a more interesting group. When the rural women topic became a choice, we were very happy because coming to this point really made us go through a political discussion. What would be the contribution, and what would be the new aspect to bring to this to the topics in the W20? Then we thought this is time for G20, all the countries, G77s, all of them, to think very, very hard on who are lagging behind. So this was the option. So we were discussion on how to address women that are most lagging behind in a way that we can accelerate the response and the possibilities of their inclusion. So we decided to talk about rural women, which is universal, which is everywhere. And we know that in respect of the level of development, all countries are still not only lagging behind in terms of gender equality, that we know is a reality, but lagging behind a lot in terms of inclusion of rural women into the development process. So it was very, very much planned to bring the discussion. So we would bring with the rural women, the discussion of women left behind and the possibility of the G20 to address the issue through the proposals of the W20. So we really hope, we want to thank all the delegates that aligned with the discussion, that supported the discussion, that really took their time to look at the issues that affects most women, as you mentioned. If you look at access to land, this is one of the most difficult things. We went to Colombia and we were looking at this huge, enormous event on women and coffee, on men and coffee. So we went to the extensive coffee, there was only men. We went to the boutique coffee, there was only women. And then we started thinking, what is this? Boutique coffee, like special coffee, are so difficult to plant, are so difficult to manage because of the variation of climate, of sun, and everything else. So what we discovered that behind that was a pattern of land distribution, of land heritage. So we know that women, at least in our region, owns land varying from 8% to 30%. So women in Colombia, the coffee growers, they were planting coffee on the top of the mountain. They had access to the same extension of their husband, of their brothers, but the brothers had the plateau, and they were given the top of the mountain. So there was nothing more left to them than really plant the special coffee, specialty. When it goes well, but when it doesn't, it can be really a problem. So access to land, access to credit, infrastructure, electricity, infrastructure involving everything, access to markets. So all the context of rural women are really need to be addressed. Besides that, women are involved in agriculture production. 45% of the labor of workers in the agriculture sector are women, and usually they are unpaid or domestic or family workers. They don't have access, the majority of the time, they don't have access to their own wages, and they, apart from that, they, as all women, they also respond for the need to provide for their household and for unpaid work as well. So we thought that the rural women was a fantastic opportunity for the G20 to give an example to all the world that it's possible to address women lagging behind, and that they would be the examples for all the other countries. So this was the decision behind it, and we are very pleased that Argentina decided, and all the delegates, thank you so much, decided to take this challenge and to respond for it.
Going back to you, I have a question from the audience that they just let me, that it's in line to what you are saying. How do you think that Women 20 can encourage the G20 leaders to accomplish the 14 Brisbane initiative of 25 by 2025 and to reduce the gender gap in labor force participation?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate. I think there was a decision taken in Australia. It's a very ambitious decision. We know also that are 5 countries among the G20 that are presenting the highest. So we know that Canada and France probably would very much meet the target, but we also know that other countries are with a lot of problem, including my country as well. So we hope that we are able to support the G20 and promoting schemes and investments that can generate new jobs. We're very concerned about the job of the future, and this is something that we are discussing, and everybody, and I thank you very much, my colleagues in the panel, for discussing the jobs of the future. We know that for every 3 jobs lost for technological advance, men get 1, whereas women get 1 of every 5 jobs lost. So we are very concerned that we are not only lagging behind, we are not with the huge deficits in terms of disparity and participation, and also unequal pay for jobs of equal value, but we are also concerned that the change that we are seeing now will very much impact on women. And again, this is a great opportunity for the G20 to address those issues and to really come up with schemes that can strengthen the capacity of the girls to attend STEM schemes, and also on the access to inclusion, technological inclusion, and also to access credit and really to promote an economy that's not only able to generate employment, but also able to generate entrepreneurships for men and women.
Oh, thank you so much for your thoughtful insights. Andrea, I have one question to you that I already prepared, and I'm going to put it with a question that I have from the audience. Is that okay? The question was, what are the most important challenges for the labor inclusion of women that were discussed in the dialogue process between the delegates, and what priority did they give to the special subject of care?
Yes, of course. Again, all our topics are really very, very connected. Most of us are talking all the time about the same, and perhaps for the audience that is important in terms of knowing that more than 300 people work all across 1 year to try to come to new action plans, new solutions, new tactics in terms of trying to advance the gender agenda and trying to close the gap, as you said, in terms of, for instance, the participation of women in the labor force. And again, this year the W20 focused in general in women empowerment, and that means many, many different things. We stayed also connected, and we also reaffirmed previous agreements that the W20 came in previous editions, because the W20 think that, of course, from year to year, we can change some specific policies, recommendations in specific aspects, but we have to sustain the main objectives in terms of trying to close the gap.
Insist on them.
Yes, insist on that until we have made progress and until we have met the objectives. Once we met that, and once we make a big progress, of course we can go on and we can change. But if we change every year, it has no sense, because we will be abandoning all the work that was performed before. Addressing your specific questions in terms of what were the main initiatives, of course you can read all the initiatives and all the policies through the communiqué and through the web site that the W20 has, but what are the main actions, and I talk about the actions because, again, we were very action-oriented in terms of where we should put our effort. The first one is to all different action plans to go close the 25 by 25. That is
the Brisbane.
Yes, it's perhaps the most relevant one, and in that sense, the W20 calls the governments to put in place and to implement action plans to try to close that gap or to accelerate to close that gap. But again, as I think that many of my colleagues said the same, it's not only a question of government, it's also a question of civil society, and it's more important the private sector. The private sector has a lot to do, has a lot to contribute, since we, the private sector, multinational organizations, have the ability to work across different sectors, different regions, different populations, and we have, of course, the ability to put in place some policies or some specific actions that can go beyond governments, that can have more power than the government requires itself. Some examples for this are the ones that perhaps are addressing in the questions. One is the parental leave. The parental leave is something that organizations can do to support not only men, but also women, because we understand that the parental leave, for instance, is a way to break barriers that prevent women from entering the working force. Another issue is the care services. We discuss a lot about care services, and W20 understand that the governments should invest in public, affordable, and high-quality health services. And I reinforce the high quality and the affordable care services, because in most of the countries, it is not an affordable thing to do. And why we discuss about care services? Because we understand that the care work that most of the women perform is one of the most important reasons why women are not included in the labor force. So the answer to the question is yes, of course, it's a priority, and governments and private sector and civil society had to work together to have better care services for everyone.
Thank you very much for both answers. Paula, the next question is for you, and can you go deeper to the bridge that talks about the digital inclusion, that it's something that it's new but not so new, and it deepens all the other bridges that women have to face in different parts of the world? What is it, and why it is so relevant to empowering women worldwide?
Well, it is extremely relevant. You know, gaps that currently exist in information technologies or ICTs are really harmful for the economies. Because why? Because they exclude sectors from the population from accessing or from enjoying the benefits that digital technology can bring, such as access to information, to education, to cultural assets, and what's more important, to job opportunities. Nowadays, 80% of households in developed countries do access the internet, but only one-third of households in developing countries access the internet. So there's a huge gap. We all believe that governments or states should take measures to ensure that all sectors of the populations get included, but paying special attention to women and girls. As you might already know, the W20 this year has set up 4 strategic objectives, including digital inclusion, alongside labor inclusion, financial inclusion, and the rural development of women. So I would like to acknowledge the cross-cutting nature of digital inclusion. Information technology, particularly mobile phones and the internet, can help us accelerate the progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to the 17 of them, to the 17 SDGs, but particularly today, now that we're talking about gender equality, SDG number 5. For example, mobile phones can help, we know this because we have lots of studies saying that mobile phones can help women feel more safe and connected, and they can also give access to life-enhancing services such as health services, financial services, and employment. ICTs can also help protect women, human rights, and help them strengthen their development politically, socially, and economically. However, having said all of this, there is a huge gender digital divide, and the problem is that this gender divide replicates real-life inequalities. And as more services and as more opportunities are being developed online, women and girls are being left behind. So this is why digital inclusion is really relevant
So
for
important.
us today.
I will take 5 more minutes, and my last question, as a manner of conclusion, are for Luisa and Priya. As we have seen, this is a multidimensional, gender inequality is a multidimensional problem that has to be addressed by multiple stakeholders, and I think, as you mentioned, as you pointed, Luisa, this is a place where it's more visible in rural women's development. So if you had to make one recommendations, if all of these were the world leaders or the G20 leaders, which kind of crucial recommendation would you make to them? And Priya, then please let be short because I'm passing a little bit the time. What could you say about the initiatives, and specifically for rural women, is the World Bank and the Wi-Fi doing about it?
Do I start?
Yes.
Well, equal access to resources, land, including management of natural resources as well, water, and the possibility of including protective technology of the environment. Then would be the what we have already mentioned. Andrea mentioned already the care systems, not only care systems, but social protection systems in general that are difficult to have a gender perspective. And we know that only around less than 50% of women worldwide receive access to pension schemes. So we do have to, it's a wonderful area to improve, and that really sprinkles into the economy, that really create a lot of opportunities. I would say also maybe create a 2025 Rural Women Global Fund. Or maybe we could have access to 30% of the Wi-Fi, and also that, like with a dedicated area of the funds that is already here to rural women. I think jobs also organize and look, all my colleagues already mentioned jobs for the future, and that implies in digital access, STEAM, really a great opportunity for girls now, because what we are seeing, it's really showing a terrible future for girls and adolescents, and also eliminate all existing discriminatory laws that we already mentioned, So I think this panel is absolutely coherent in terms of the proposals that we brought here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Priya, would you like to close?
So if I could just say, I agree with everything that my co-panelists have said, and I should have also mentioned that as part of the policy, legal regulatory environment, childcare and elderly care, I cannot overemphasize the importance of those topics to help women integrate more effectively into formal economies and allow women to really unleash their potential. Because without those kinds of policies in place, it's really hard for women to succeed. So I just want to emphasize that. In terms of our linkages, so the W20, I don't know if you know, but the W20 is actually a founding partner of the Wi-Fi and has a permanent seat on our governing committee as an observer. I'm very happy to have Susanna Balbo as one of the members of our governing committee. We also have UN Women, actually, as a permanent member of our governing committee. Fumzile sits as an observer, and she's been attending all of our meetings. We, are very working very closely with a number of partners, and the purpose of having groups like the W20 and UN Women on our governing committee is really to ensure coordination, collaboration, cross-fertilization of ideas. You mentioned rural women, and I have to say that that is something that Wi-Fi has a strong focus on. And in fact, in our first round of funding allocations that I mentioned, there are a number of projects, a very large number of projects that actually focus on helping rural women entrepreneurs, both farm and off-farm agribusiness and various other kinds of rural activities, in recognition of the fact that very large number of women in developing countries are based in rural areas. So I think there are huge opportunities to do more, to work together, and we are focusing on the poorest, on the most disadvantaged, on fragile, conflict-affected countries, and indeed women operating in rural settings in all of those places.
Thank you very much for the answer, and we are perfect because it's 0-0. That was great.
We are women.
We're women, yeah. So thank you so much. It was an honor to moderate this panel with all of you. All of your insights were very thoughtful, and I think it was a good first panel to go ahead with the upcoming ones. We didn't want to be spoilers neither, so then you can all enjoy the upcoming ones. I think that the most important idea is that gender inequality is still a problem that has to be approached in a multidisciplinary way by multiple stakeholders. Governments are the most important one, and there's where all the work done by W20 pushing and continue pushing on the same things and themes once over again till this is accepted and taken concrete actions by the leader is fundamental. And I think that we also agreed on that it's not only ethically right, but also economically profitable. So thank you very much for being here, and hope to see you the rest of the day. And thank you for the audience and all the delegates. It was a pleasure. Thank you.